Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to show you another way in which you can access APIs using Microsoft Excel. Previously we covered a simple example where we use the random API, so I'll link up to that video here. Today we're going to look at how you can access an API that requires an API access key, sometimes known as authentication. So we'll look at the Weather API, and before we do so, I'll just show you an example of different APIs and how their access entitlements work. If you type in GitHub public APIs, the first result should be a list of essentially a catalog, a library of APIs that exist out on the world web. And we want to go to Weather, and here we're going to look at a Weather API today. You can see the name of each API, the description, and then auth, which is short for authentication. So this, if it says no, it means you can publicly access it, like we did with the random API in the previous video. But where it says API key, essentially you need to register with that platform and they will assign you an API key, and you can use that API key to then run an API call. Don't worry about HTTPS or CORS, but this is what we're mainly concerned with. So today we're going to look at the OpenWeatherMap. Let's click on that. And this is the API we're going to be playing with. So I'll just give you an idea. I'm just going to accept this. And here you can see I live in London right now. I'm here physically right now. You can see the temperature in London is 6 degrees Celsius. So we record our temperatures in Celsius. And you can see a description. There's some mist in London right now, and there's a light breeze. We've got other points such as, the pressure, we've got humidity levels, visibility, dew points, etc. I'm not too interested in those, and for now I'm not really concerned about the hourly forecast or the 8-day forecast. So all I want is the name of the city, the weather, the temperature in Celsius, and I need a brief description of the weather of the weather conditions as of right now. So without further ado, let's open up Excel and we'll begin. So guys, I'm now in Microsoft Excel, and what you want to do is make sure you've got the Power Query add-in. Please refer back to the previous video and I'll show you how you can get that add-in. And what we want to do is we're going to select from web to load in our API call. But let's just get familiar with the API really quickly. So if we go back to OpenWeather, we can see that the weather currently where I am in London is 10 degrees Celsius. And we can see it's overcast with clouds and there's a gentle breeze. So the data I'm looking for is London as a location, as a city, and some description. So gentle breeze, overcast clouds. I don't mind, but I'd like some general description to go along with the API query. We can ignore the rest, like hourly forecast, 8-day forecast. Now what we want to do is click on API, and we need our base API URL. So here you can see you've got different API documentations, and essentially what we want is the current weather data. Again, as I mentioned, we're not interested in the hourly forecast or the daily forecast over 16 days or 4 days. So if we click on API doc, that gives you another page and it gives you an example, essentially gives you the structure for how you should put together your API base URL. And then you'll see parameters. So in these curly brackets are some parameters. So we have lat and lon, which is short for latitude and longitude. So we're going to get that for London. We've also got the app ID, which is essentially our API ID, our key. We've got mode, by default it's JSON, but if we wanted XML or HTML, we can set that here. Units, by default it's in standard, Fahrenheit, but we want to change it to metric, so we get Celsius. That's the unit of measure in the UK for weather temperature. And finally, you've got language, optional, but we'll leave at the default, which is English. So then it gives you an example call. So it gives you essentially an example URL. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into a notepad here. We'll come back to it in a moment. Now remember, you're going to need your API key. To get that, you need to go into your your profile once you've registered with OpenWeather or whichever website you're using, and click on API keys. Now obviously I've got a temporary key here, but you're going to need your own key to make this work if you're using the OpenWeather API. This is a temporary key, it won't be available after this demo. So what we want to do, go back into Excel. We're going to go into From Web. It's going to load up the wizard for Power Query, and we want to put in our URL. This time we click Advanced. So we're going to take this base URL, and remember, I'm just going to take this. Our base URL is up to here actually. Put this in here, and then we've got some parameters. This is where we get to add different parts. So now, first parameter is latitude. I'm going to do question mark. Actually, question mark sits there, equals lat, or lat equals. We're going to do the same with and lon equals. This is our longitude, and then finally we're going to do app API ID. App ID rather, sorry, and then we want to now define and put in some details to this. So lat and lon, we need that for London, UK, where I am right now. Let's search for that. So if we go into Google, we're going to type in London, lat, lon, and we can see the latitude for London is 51.50. So we'll go back into our parameter here, 51.50. That's a longitude, and the latitude is, I've got that the wrong way around. So put that here, and the longitude is negative 0.11. So negative 0.11, and that should give us our global geographic coordinates for the city of London. Now we want to put in our app ID, so essentially our API key. This is where we can take our API key here and put that in there. Now I've got one more part to add, and that's a reference which we need to make. We need to set a parameter on units. So the way units works, you can click on this, learn more. It shows you that you can set or keep the default standard unit of measurement, which is in Fahrenheit, or you can choose metric. So the way this works is you put the parameter and units after the API parameter. So we go back into our builder, put that in here, and I'm going to leave it as metric. If we now run this, we'll get data from our API call, and I should also get figures back which are in the format of Celsius degrees for UK temperature measurement. Click OK at that. Once we've done that, Power Query will then generate our API call, and we've now returned with some data. So let's look at this. What do we have here? We've got obviously some nested data. So this is very much in a nested format. You won't notice it, but certain parameters are nested within other parameters. Like before, we have a nested structure, so we need to kind of unravel it and trying to get it back to one hierarchy rather than multiple levels in the hierarchy. So what we want to do is kind of inspect into all of these and kind of take the detail that we want. Notice Lambeth is given here. Actually, we wanted London. Lambeth is a town, an area within London. So we can go back in and change this. So for instance, if I go London, lat, lon, I'll just show you how we can make this kind of correction. It's fairly straightforward. So here you can see we want to put in 51. This is for the London Library, 51.50. And the longitude is negative 0.136. So what we're going to do is go back here, negative 136, and 51.50 is okay for our latitude. And we can actually enter this once we've done that, and now we can see our city name has changed to London, which is what I originally wanted. So you can still go into your URL for your API call and make those adjustments as needed. If I wanted to, for instance, I can remove or change the units. I can change the API key, not that you would, but you can add in other parameters as well. So what do we have here? we have our results and we want to start to kind of drill down into some of these. So let's isolate weather, for instance. So before we move any further, I want to convert this into a table. We've now got our data in a more tabular format with a name and a value. Some of these are static, so visibility is static. You can see name is static. We kind of want this one. Let's have a look. We're trying to find our description for our weather. Remember, if we go back into the Weather API, you can see OpenWeather. The weather for London is 10 degrees and we have overcast clouds with a gentle breeze. So we're going to look for the temperature and the description. Let's have a look at list here under weather, drill down. Here we go. We've got our overcast clouds right here. All we're missing is our gentle breeze, but we'll take a look to see if we can find it. So we're going to undo our steps here to go back to the original query. So remember, this is your original query. Any changes you make, you see them as applied steps. You can go back up the number of steps that you began with. Let's have a look at main, and you can see we've now got our temperature, 8.18 degrees, which I'm happy with. It's currently showing 10 degrees, but remember, it depends on the exact latitude and longitude that we've given. So 8 degrees is okay, I'm happy with that. Looks about right. Go back to our table here. In fact, let's actually just refresh this, just make sure we did that correctly. So overcast clouds, general breeze, 10 degrees. Then what we want to do is look for gentle breeze. That's what we're looking for. So we may very much find that under wind. Nope, not here. So let's go back one. Let's look at sys. Not here. So it may very well be under clouds. Nope, not there. In that case, it's going to be under. Let's recheck what we have under clouds. Nothing here. So most likely, because of the longitude and latitude, the two components we need are actually main and description. So we'll take that. I'll accept that for now. So remember, I only want a description. I want the temperature, and I want the city location. So there's a couple of ways of going about this. You can kind of isolate what you want and what you need, which we're going to do now. So I'm going to select weather here, and actually I want to drill down into name and just select weather. That then brings up just that single name value, if you like. And because we can now explore a single value, we've now got two arrows in opposite directions. Essentially, Power Query allows us to kind of drill down into these. We're going to left click and expand to new rows. It then brings up a record. We can expand this as well. And these are now the IDs we see. So let's click OK at that. This is fine. All I want is a value description. So I'm just going to actually go back a step. And this time, when I left click on this, I'm only going to take description. Uncheck these. I'm actually going to uncheck the column name prefix as well. I just want these names as column headers. So click OK at that. We've now got overcast clouds. So what we want to do is save this as a query. Remember, this is our original source. So I'm going to make a copy of this. So right click and click duplicate. And now that's okay. It's saying our data may be 2 days old. Let's click refresh. Now what I want to do is just rename this query. Remember, I made a duplication of this, and I'm going to call it description because that's what we have. It's a description. Left click out of that, and now we'll go back to our original source query. I'm going to go back up these steps, and now what I want next is the temperature. So remember, temperature was under main. So I'm going to isolate that. So left click here, find main, click OK. And again, do the same thing again, drill down into these columns. And what I want here is the temp. Click OK to that. And you can now see the temperature. Temperature is now correct. It's 10.33 after I refreshed it. So remember, it was 10 degrees. And we're now seeing 10.33. So this is more like it. And that's all I want. So now what I'm going to do is duplicate this. I'm now going to give this a name, call it temperature. So now we've got a description table and a temperature table. Leave the values, and then we're going to go back to our source again, undo these steps, and we need one last value. You guessed it, row number 12, name. So left click in here and just select name. And we're okay with this. This is now going to be our geography, so or city. Let's just call it city. So we're going to right click, duplicate, and rename this one as city. Okay guys, so we're almost there. We've got city, we've got temperature, and we've got description. We now want to bring them all together. The original source, we can leave that as it is. We don't really need to touch that anymore. And then what you want to do is append queries. Append queries is new, and we're going to stitch it all up together. 3 or more tables. We've got city already. We need to add the other 2. So we're going to add temperature and description. And then we're going to click OK. And what Power Query has now done is brought all 3 into one. So this is what I wanted. This is kind of similar to what I wanted. This is a kind of format, almost similar to the format I wanted. We've got a few options here. We can transpose it. If you go into transform and then transpose, you can flip that around. So here you can see name, main, weather. We can actually use, essentially we want to use these 3 as headers. So what we can do here, we can see if we can use our headers. Yep, use first row as headers. That moves everything up one level, which is good. I want to rename this to city, and this is now going to be temperature, and this is going to be description. Okay, not there quite yet. You can see you got different values scattered across different rows. We want everything on row 1. So in order to lift this 10.3 degrees Celsius up, we want to fill and fill up. So essentially it doubles it, duplicates it, and moves it up. Similar with overcast clouds, I want to fill upwards. And now what we can do is delete row 2 and 3. We only want to keep row 1. So select row 2 and, well, select into the table. Go to home, remove rows, remove bottom rows, and we want to remove the bottom 2 rows, so row 3 and row 2. And that's it guys. We've now got the data we wanted, the city, the temperature, the description. All that's left to do is now load this into a table in Excel. So you click left, go left here, click on close and load, and then close and load. You can choose close and load to, you can choose a specific tab or straight into a pivot table. We're just going to generate that into a normal table. Now you can see Power Query's worked its magic. We've got our 3 data points, and we've achieved this going through a number of different steps, and we've managed to kind of pivot and transform our data along the way. So guys, hope that's been useful. You can actually go back into your original query. If you go select into the table, go to query and edit. If you wanted to, you could actually go back in and play with the source. You can, go back into your source here, change the longitude, latitude. Maybe I want, for instance, I want the longitude, latitude for Manchester. So if we go into Google here, this time I'm typing Manchester. In UK, Manchester latitude is 53.48, so latitude 53.48, and the longitude is negative 2.24, so negative 2.24. If we hit OK, we should see the name change. And there we go. We've got Manchester now. And then you can repeat the same process, load your data in, play with it, isolate it, transform it, rename it, remove rows, remove columns, rename headers exactly as you wish. And then you can then generate the data that we had a little earlier. Or you can just close this. I'm okay with this actually. I don't wanna edit this any further. I'm just gonna close this, close up Power Query Editor, and I'm just going to stick with this. Guys, that's in a nutshell how you pull data from a API that requires an authentication key, an API key, using Excel, using Power Query, and we've managed to pull data on something that I understand, which is weather, and weather patterns and weather temperatures. And we've managed to play with different parameters. There are more parameters out there we've not touched on. If you go back into the documentation for the API, you'll see there are actually parameters. For instance, there's parameters for city names. We didn't use that. We could have used a city name instead of longitude or latitude. But there's many more. There's even like wind factors, UV levels, visibility, wind speed, you name it. So feel free to play with these, get a feel of the API here. I think the OpenWeather API is quite nice because it's got quite a rich variety of parameters and data points, and the documentation is quite user-friendly as well. It's not too difficult to kind of make sense of. If you're interested in learning more, you can go into GitHub and type in Github API catalogue and find a whole public APIs, GitHub public APIs, and that will give you a full list of APIs which you can look at, not just for weather, but all sorts of categories, from music to health to government, you name it. And last but not least, I just want to say there is one more video that I'll be posting after this, and that video will cover the same topic, how to query a API that requires an API key, but this time we'll do it entirely in Python. And believe it or not, in Python you can achieve the same results in a more efficient manner with far fewer lines, far fewer steps than what we took to create this. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please, if you haven't watched the first one, please check back to the first video on how you can access an API. It's very similar to this. Do look out for more videos. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. And I promise to come back with some more covering APIs, cloud computing, Python, and more. Take care, guys. Thank you for watching. Cheers.